I'm here with Colin Mooock, and Colin, you got some exciting things going on right now. What have you spent the last year and a half doing?
Well, I was trying to improve my snowboarding.
Oh, snowboarding, okay, yeah.
And, let's see, I guess I was doing a rooftop garden, so
yeah,
keeping the plants watered, that kind of thing.
How about writing? You done any writing in the last year?
Oh, yeah,
right.
right. So I did some writing, too.
Okay.
I just finished up a new book called Essential Actionscript 3.
Essential Actionscript 3.
That's right.
I think there's a lot of people that are waiting for that book.
I hope so. I've been waiting for it for a couple years.
Yeah, right. Okay, so this is the third book in this series, I think, right?
Yeah, it's sort of a wandering series in a way, but they're all related.
Okay.
They follow my own path as a programmer and as somebody just learning, things as they evolve through the Macromedia and Adobe life cycle over the past 8 or 9 years. But my first book, The Definitive Guide, was completely from scratch, an introduction to programming for new programmers, and also a complete reference guide to the Flash Player API. And then the second book, Essential Actionscript 2, pretty much assumed that you knew how to program some already. It's sort of like if you know variables and functions and you're used to programming on a timeline in Flash, then here's object-oriented programming, and this is the things you can do with object-oriented programming. And the third book, I expected to just be an update to that. Sort of again assume that people would know what object-oriented programming is, and then kind of take it from there. But everything changed so much in ActionScript 3, and in so many fundamental ways. There are so many improvements to the language, and everything's so much cleaner that I thought it was time to start over again. And
so you started over how you organized the book then?
Yeah, I started over in terms of I rewrote the whole thing from scratch.
Wow.
And with a few, I borrowed a few sections from the other books, like arrays, for example. A little bit.
Yeah.
That stuff is pretty much the same. So there, maybe 50 or 100 pages are repurposed. But I reteach the concept of how to programming with from a new perspective, instead of starting with variables and instead of starting from a timeline, actually start without any authoring tool in mind. So like it doesn't matter whether you're using Flash authoring tool or Flex Builder or even a command line compiler or anything like that, MXMLC or something. It just says if you were to start to write a program, what would be the first things you'd have to consider?
Gotcha.
And so it starts from classes and object-oriented programming. It says the first thing you need to know about programming anything, forget whether it's the timeline or anywhere else, is this world of object-oriented programming. So it is a complete kind of revision of how I used to approach teaching programming to beginners.
Because you used to really assume that you knew the Flash tool and things like that.
Exactly,
too, right?
exactly. I mean, the first book is a good point. The first book said you have to know what a timeline is. You have to know what a movie clip is. You have to know what the library is, and the basics of. You're an animator who wants to now start doing a little scripting on frames. But this is a different kind of perspective. It's saying you've seen the way applications work, you've seen the way content works online, and you want to know how to create interactive content for deployment to the Flash platform. Some player. It's not even player specific. It doesn't say the plugin, or it doesn't say, Apollo, the desktop player, or Flash Lite. It just says if you are programming, or if you want to create interactive content, the first thing you need to know is what is a class, and sort of.
So that's a pretty big deal. So whether you're doing Flash development or Flex development or targeting the player, or targeting Apollo, none of that really matters as much. This book is just more agnostic. It's all the language itself, and doesn't worry about the tools.
That's right. So that's
great.
I mean, and that's not only it's a good thing about the book, I think, but it's also kind of pays a little tribute to how far the Flash platform has come, because it says we now can write a book that teaches fundamental concepts that can have any tool set for production and any runtime for deployment.
Right.
But those fundamentals will be applicable across all of the tools and all of the runtimes.
So, who's the audience for this book? What are the type of people that would benefit from this book?
It's pretty broad because the book is 900 pages.
Okay.
And so there are sections that are very, very, very technical, and then there are sections that are, I mean, the first paragraph of the book explains not just what classes and object-oriented programming are, but it explains what a programmer is, you know, like what even code is. The word code, where does that come from?
Right, okay. Not real basics.
It's not etymology, but it's the idea of if you are a designer and you're kind of like, you've heard all of these terms. It's
so you
like,
provide the context for everything.
It's a context.
Okay.
It says, you know, so it's the first, let's say 6 or 7 chapters are designed to take you from absolutely no programming knowledge to compiling your first program.
Oh, cool.
And then it moves on, after it covers the fundamentals of the language, moves on to specific topics, like there's a 60-page chapter on XML.
Oh, wow.
And the E4X stuff.
Yeah, right. There's a lot of new stuff in there.
Yep.
Okay.
And so that chapter is going to be something that will give people who are interested in XML and already know programming and don't need to read the first 7 or 8 chapters of the book. They can just hit the XML chapter if that's what they want. There's a big, nasty chapter on security, same type of thing. If you wanted to know.
So you can use it kind of as a reference guide and as more of a linear learning
experience,
right?
To general topics, right? So there are specific topics covered. It's not an API reference, so it does not cover all the classes, methods, variables, functions, sort of in the language. Methodically, instead what it does is it's a topic-based
Right. So
approach.
I want to load XML data into my application. And
Kind of.
Like, you know, I can go in and learn all the pieces of that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's not a cookbook in terms of, you know, it doesn't base it on I'm trying to solve this specific problem today. It's more like I want to go educate myself about the XML feature in Flash Player. And then the second half of the book is all about display programming and putting things on screen. So there's again a 60-page chapter on text and you know, working with text with a new language, and it goes through things like loading fonts, and it talks in some detail about the text rendering engine, what was Saffron.
Yeah, right.
And there's a chapter on bitmap programming. Then there's a nice chunk of chapters.
Bitmap programming stuff, there's a lot of excitement around that, too. So you explain some of how that works?
It's, again, the bitmap programming actually is for, again, a sort of introductory. It's about a 50-page chapter that teaches the introductory concepts that you need to do any kind of bitmap programming. You could write a book on bitmap programming. You could write a series on it, and they do. People do write series on just bitmap. And the player's API is extensive enough that there's no way to cover it all, but it's an introduction. I think one of the sections I'm maybe most proud of, except for the introductory stuff I like a lot, because I finally framed it in a way that's satisfying.
If people don't get all of the context around it, then they can't benefit from the rest of the book.
But then next to that, I think there's, I explain the new display API and how the display list works.
Oh, yeah. A lot of changes in there from the old versions of the
Absolutely,
runtime,
and where the movie clip now fits into the larger structure, and how you can attach things and remove them from the display list, and the hierarchical tools that you use to manage that, and how that works in with the frame rate. There's a whole section on sort of time-based programming and dealing with Flash's way of updating the screen, which is new to programmers from other languages. They're probably not used to Flash's sort of scheduled update system, which is the frame tick. They're used to saying, I want to update the screen right now, in the middle of whatever, a loop even. But this is kind of the Flash runtime world says, I'll update the screen when I'm ready to at the end of the frame tick. So there's sections about that. And then one of the harder things to write was the event flow through the display list. So handling input events, say if you had like an OK button on a dialog box, you could respond to the clicking of that OK button on the dialog box object itself. So if you have the outer container, that outer container can listen for an event that's destined to arrive at, say, the OK button. So that whole concept of if you have a hierarchical event dispatch going from the outermost display object through all the containers to the target, you know, how do you register listeners for that? How do you register for before the target is told, when the target is being told, when, you know, after the target is being told?
Yeah, right.
So that whole system of the event dispatch and how it integrates with the general event architecture and the player, that was altogether, that's probably 200 pages. That whole line of thinking through event display and handling events.
And then something you and I were talking about yesterday is you've kind of decided to use more of a real-world example throughout the book instead of a bunch of more abstract concepts, you know, to make it a little bit more, you know, because I know that when I've read Actionscript books before, sometimes the example, I just can't relate that to how it would really actually use that code.
Right.
So, you know, tell us more about that. You've kind of, you've changed how you've done that in the past.
Yep, I did. I mean, Bruce Epstein was my editor for the first 2 books, and one of his regular complaints would always be, he would say, "This is a degenerate example," meaning that it doesn't do anything other than prove that the code works in the way that you just described that it would work.
Right.
So it, you know, just, you know, trace X and X has a value or something like that. Having gone back to Essential Actionscript 2 and looked at it and trying to decide what I should change and how should I improve it based on that, I found a lot of things like, you know, new box class and stuff, like things that work conceptually but don't kind of directly apply to a specific programming problem. So yeah, the goal of the book is to, as much as possible, never have a degenerate example. So every example, has something to do with the real world. Maybe it's a little bit of a list box, or it's a bit of a chat app or something. And the main thread that runs through the first, say, 10 or 12 chapters is a little simulation called the virtual pet in the virtual zoo. And it's sort of like, you can compare it to building a Tamagotchi game for kids.
Cool. I like that.
And so it teaches this running thread of the basics of object-oriented programming through the virtual pet example. And that's actually all online already, the code for all that. All the code examples and specifically the virtual pet example is all online right now at my website.
So kind of related to all of this, I get a lot of requests from a lot of people all the time looking to hire Flash developers. And it seems like right now the demand is much bigger than it's ever been before. And now there's a lot of people who are realizing it's a really good career path to get into. So there's a lot of people who are interested in getting into this stuff. The book, I think, is a great way for people to kind of learn what ActionScript's all about. What are some of your tips for people who don't know any of this stuff, but they're really eager to get into it? What are some things that they can do to really learn more about all of this and really decide if they want to do this as a career path?
Well, I guess it really depends on what kind of person you are already. You know, if you're a designer already, or if you're a programmer already coming from another language, for example. You know, I think the biggest tip that a programmer from another language can be given is Flash is now built for you. So don't be afraid that you're going to wander into some sort of awkward development environment with tools that you don't understand, because it's now a known quantity in terms of the development process. The development tool Flex Builder is built on Eclipse. So all of your
good coding tools, good debugging.
Good debugging. You can use source save or whatever Subversion or whatever source control software you want. You can build it into you can have build processes. You can do automated builds through Ant. So just hearing those things, I think, will help.
That's enough.
Help traditional programmers say, okay, if I have to do a Flash job and somebody says, can you do Flash? And I'm wondering, should I, can I learn that, or should I learn that? The tools are familiar. The world is familiar now, so don't be afraid to jump in. Don't be afraid that you'll be faced with an unknown quantity.
And then on the other side, I'm glad you mentioned it this way, whether you're a designer or you're a developer coming into it, I also talk to a lot of people who are more on the traditional design side. And of course, as you know, a lot of the most well-known people in the Flash community started on the design side. You know, they weren't, not computer science majors and such, but a lot of, you know, artistic backgrounds. So people who are in that position today, who really haven't gotten into coding and interactivity, you know, I think some people some of them look at Actionscript 3 and think it's just too much. It's too complex. So, you know, is this something that if people think, you know, they really want to learn interactivity, is it something they should really try and get into, or has the language just gotten too complex for them?
You know, it's a funny question because you hear it so often, and there is this kind of mythology almost that as the numbers go up, the language gets harder, and doing it gets harder, and it's almost frustrating because you're excited to be able to tell them that no, it's not. You know, like, don't worry. But in a way, it's frustrating because it's hard to actually convince people. They just see the complexity of how it could be so complex. They see people talking about the most complex features, and they think, I can't do that. But realistically,
people don't spend time talking about the easier stuff. They're focusing on the advanced concepts all the time.
But realistically, the 1, 2, 3 thing is almost a bit of a misnomer because in, let's say, Flash Player 4, or even 2, you could say Flash Player 2 in the Flash authoring tool, Flash 2. You could say go to and play frame 5. And that was how people learned scripting. They were like, okay, well, there's a command, and it's got an argument, which is the 5. Go to and play is a command. And so I can understand the concept of somewhere there's a command, and I give it some information, and it does something for me, and it has a result. That's programming. And that's why all the designers learned how to program through those simple command sets. Now, in the early days, there were only 20 or so commands, so go to and play, stop, whatever. So people, when they started in Flash 2, they say, okay, go to and play, and they could see the result on the timeline. If you jump ahead to Flash 9, you can still do that. You do still do that.
It's still there.
It is absolutely still part of the language. It's part of Actionscript 3. It has not been removed. It has not been replaced. It's all still part of it. Flash and Actionscript 3 is extremely kind of respectful of its heritage. It doesn't really shake up too many things unless those things were kind of awkward and broken, and then it does shake that kind of stuff up. But yeah, the very basics of I can create a variable on a timeline using the keyword var still. I can create a function on a timeline using the keyword function, and those are the basic things that were born in Flash 5 in terms of like the first time you could do those. In Flash 4, it was still like calling a subroutine on a frame by making the playhead go there and come back, right?
I love it.
But the Flash...
the good old days.
Exactly. But the Flash 5 stuff, the core Actionscript 1 language is still 100% valid. You can do all those things still. It's just that now this sort of enormous body of power and flexibility and a new tool set has been built on top of that. So that you can say to a Java developer, if you want to treat this language as a development platform similar to the development platforms you're used to working in, you can definitely do that. So, so my biggest tip to the designers would be, again, don't be afraid by the possibilities of the language. Start with the
basic things
that everyone has started with. Since
now you can
Flash
just do
2.
more with the language than you ever could before.
Exactly, and you'll evolve into that. And for people who are kind of thinking, well, like, I don't know, I'm used to attach movie. You know, and that's kind of what I want to do. I want to do my load movie thing. I just want to type in load movie, and it'll, like, I have my Swift file, and I say load movie. For some of those things, there are some changes, but in all cases, as far as I can tell, the changes are just so much for the better. They just add so much more flexibility to the possibilities, to what you can do, and they take away, you know, the potential problems.
Good, excellent. Well, when's the book available?
June 1st.
June 1st.
June 1st.
Awesome. I can't wait to get a copy. Colin Moock, Essential Actionscript 3. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you.